The search for the next head coach continues. It's been a busy day for the Chicago Bears front office, scheduling and requesting multiple interviews for the next head coach of this storied franchise. On top of that, they signed multiple players to reserve futures contracts. It's been a busy day for Ryan Poles. I'm going to quickly cover it all. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Shortly after I released a video this afternoon breaking down the first round of interview requests, another name was added to the list: Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka. And that was quickly followed by four more interview requests from the Bears. The Bears have requested to interview with Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy, Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores, and Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. But that's not all. The Bears also requested to interview with Ravens OC Todd Monken as well. That brings the total to 11 coaches that the Bears are requesting to interview, and it's still the first day. And that's not even counting Thomas Brown. And then the Bears signed 8 players to reserve future contracts, including some familiar names like Theo Benedict, Jamri Chroma, and Ricky Stromberg. Today has been a whirlwind, so as a reminder, and in case you missed my video earlier, here are all of the current coaches the Bears have requested to interview for their vacant head coaching position, and the players the Bears signed to contracts for next season. First off, the Bears requested to interview both Lions coordinators Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, former Titans head coach Mike Vrabel, as well as defensive coordinators Anthony Weaver and Vance Joseph, followed by Arizona Cardinals OC Drew Petzing. I covered those 6 names in my video earlier today, but since then we have another 5 names to add to the list, and I want to briefly cover each candidate. Brian Flores is the first one. He's a hot name going around. The former Dolphins head coach is now the Vikings defensive coordinator, and he's a big reason for the success they've had this season. Flores does have some questions about what happened in Miami, but he was fired after going 10-6 and 9-8 in his final 2 years. At some point, I believe Flores will get another head coaching opportunity. But I do believe there's more to that story that we simply just don't know. Next up is another former head coach, Arthur Smith, who led the Falcons for a few years before being fired, and he is now the Steelers offensive coordinator. But not to be outdone, the Bears requested to interview yet another former head coach who actually happens to be a current head coach that might just be a free agent. Mike McCarthy of the Dallas Cowboys. The longtime Packers coach should be familiar to most Bears fans. He's in a unique situation where he actually has a clause in his contract where he's allowed to interview with other teams. He has not been fired, but the Bears did request to interview him. Something strange is happening in Dallas. And then we have 2 more offensive coordinators that have been requested to be interviewed. Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator of the New York Giants, who worked with Ryan Poles in Kansas City, another connection for our general manager. And then Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator, who has gotten MVP performances out of Lamar Jackson. Bringing in more offensive names evens out the interview list a bit. 4 of the candidates are defensive coordinators, and 5 of the candidates are offensive coordinators, and then the other 2 are head coaches Mike McCarthy and Mike Vrabel. 1 an offensive head coach and 1 a defensive head coach. So overall, we are keeping the list pretty fair. On day 1, scheduling 6 interviews with offensive-minded head coaches and 5 with defensive-minded coaches. Out of those 11, 4 have already been head coaches in the NFL, while the other 7 would be first-time coaches. But the Bears clearly are casting a wide net here. If you count Thomas Brown as another interview, that's 12 that we already have in the works, and this is day 1. So what coaches are being left out and could still be interviewed going forward? Cliff Kingsbury is probably the biggest one. He's the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator, and then the others are Liam Cohen, the Bucks OC, Joe Brady, the Bills OC, and I'd probably include the OC of the Texans, Bobby Slowick, as well. It is worth noting that all 4 of those teams do have playoff games this weekend, so maybe the Bears are choosing to wait to schedule interviews with them, or those teams could be choosing to make others wait until they are allowed for interviews. It's hard to tell, but something to definitely take note of. Brian Flores and Anthony Weaver both have games this weekend as well. And that didn't stop the Bears from requesting interviews there. And then finally, Pete Carroll is the other one that people are probably wondering about. I haven't heard anything official, but the Bears do not have to announce if they interview Carroll. Since he's not under contract with another team, they can interview him at any time, similar to Mike Vrabel. So just because there's no news doesn't mean they don't plan to interview Pete Carroll. But here we go again. As I was almost finished with this video, yet another name was added to the list. Former Stanford head coach and current Broncos senior executive David Shaw has also been requested to interview for the Bears' vacant head coach opening. Now, this one surprised me a bit, but he is yet another well respected football name, but one that caught me off guard for sure. That's 13 total interviews scheduled, 8 players signed to futures contracts, all of this on day one of the Chicago Bears 2025 offseason. And for those who believe the clickbait media reports that Ryan Poles is being fired, the joke is on you. Our general manager is leading this head coaching search and getting ready for another huge offseason. Stay tuned for day 2 of the Bears offseason tomorrow. Let me know how you guys are feeling. Remember to hit that like button for me. And until next time, bear down.